Hopefully we won't get too much background noise here. Kind of a nice day to sit here with the windows down. I was going to go somewhere more interesting, but I've got some stuff to do here. I just thought I'd kill a little time here, sitting in my car, make this video. This is actually the video that I was actually planning to make earlier this morning, and got sidetracked with something else. As you can see, I'm much smoother now. Fixed my clippers, took them apart, cleaned them up a little bit, got them going again, shaved. Don't look like a mountain man quite so much now. But what I was wanting to talk about is the subject of age gap relationships. Something that's been done to death. And I have to admit, this is inspired by my own personal life. Waking up in the morning next to a cuddly, beautiful woman who's like almost 30 years younger than me every day. And you know, it's not a bad life. Not a bad life at all. I wouldn't say it's necessarily something that, you know, you necessarily aspire to. If things had worked out differently in my life, that's not where I would be right now, you know. A lot of times when you're young, you're with someone and you think, oh, we're going to grow old together and have grandchildren, and someday we'll be 70, 80 years old together, and all of that, which is what a lot of people think. And that doesn't happen for most people, you know. So a lot of guys, they get on later in their life and they end up finding themselves single, and they end up finding themselves involved with somebody younger. Certainly for a lot of people, that's an attraction to going off to the Philippines or somewhere, is to deliberately find someone like that. You know, in my case, it's not something I was actually specifically looking for, but certainly isn't something that that made me unhappy, you know. I'll say right up front, this is not going to be another one of those stupid American women suck videos, you know. I don't think there's anything wrong with Western women personally. I know plenty of really nice women here in America, and to try and act like Western women, try to find a place to put this phone. I'll just try and wedge it here on my steering wheel. You know, acting like Western women are horrible. You know, what does that say about, you know, the people in your life that are Western women? You know, your mother, your sisters, for some people, their daughters, whatever. The idea that Western women are something evil is just kind of silly to me. That doesn't mean that I don't like women from other cultures. Even as a kid, you know, I always kind of had more of an eye for women from like the Orient or other places where dark-skinned people, you know, and dark hair and dark eyes. I grew up surrounded by blonde people with blue eyes, so brown skin, dark hair, and all that was always much more exotic and attractive to me for some reason. Though, what is there to say? You know, all kinds of women, different colors, different colored hair, and skin complexions that are very, very beautiful, you know. So for me, it's not a question of being in the market for one specific kind of woman or something. That's just where my life took me, you know. But it's interesting the kind of people who get worked up about age gap relationships. I used to get comments from people on Facebook back when I hung out on places where, you know, you would have controversies, which I try to avoid these days. But people would see a profile picture of me and my wife, who obviously back then was much younger than she is now even. You know, like, oh, where'd you buy your wife? The same place Trump bought his, and things like that. Anytime you had an argument about something that they didn't want to make a rational argument against, then it would turn into a personal attack, which focus on you, you having a young wife, and oh, you went and bought a wife somewhere, or like the implication, of course, being that you're too much of a loser to find somebody here. Even though personally in my life here, back before I met my wife, before I got involved in this whole Philippines thing, I've been involved with people who are older than me. And, I used to have people even trying to hook me up with other people that work at the post office, and oh, you should, this woman, she's really nice, and all that. At the time, honestly, for a large part of that time, I was focused on my writing and things like that. I had no interest in developing any kind of another social life that would interfere with me being able to focus on my writing, which I was trying to do at the time. People have different reasons at different points in their life for not necessarily being interested in being connected with anybody, And a lot of people, though, that's just the way they want to act. Because a lot of people, when they interact with you anyways, especially if it's someone that they disagree with and they have an argument with you about some other topic, they're going to try and find things in your personal life to attack you for. And obviously that's the low-hanging fruit. If you're an older guy and have a really young wife, then they're going to jump on that. That's going to be the first thing they attack. Like, what a loser you are. You had to go find a little girl, or what? Couldn't find a real woman, On the other hand, you've got guys who, there's one prominent YouTuber in the Philippines who, he always likes to talk about, men age like wine and women age like milk, which is bullshit, That's kind of an arrogant attitude, you'll hear that a lot, of course, often as a criticism, why do people think it's attractive when you get somebody like Tommy Lee Jones all wrinkled up and old, and yet when a woman gets a little bit older, all of a sudden they're ugly, Whereas with a man, those are just character lines. You can see them here, man. All those years out in the sun, squinting against the sun, and then the wear and tear from the weather. Am I aging like wine? One thing you have to understand too about wine, a lot of wines don't age so well, It's not every wine that you can cellar for 30 or 40 years. Maybe some nice vintage ports, some really good Bordeaux, Burgundy. There's some wines from other places that are modeled on those, obviously. It takes a certain structure, and obviously the conditions have to be perfect too, If you've got a nice limestone cave under your house, or enough money to construct, a 10,000 bottle cellar that is perfectly maintained at a specific temperature, a specific humidity, and everything is perfect and free of vibrations and stuff, then okay, you can age some shit for a pretty long time, depending. That was one of my dreams back in the day. I had the opportunity. I could have bought some really good Bordeaux and Burgundy, super great vintage years back in the 90s. That would have been really, really good. I figured, man, I could buy some of this shit someday when I'm retiring. Be sitting around drinking that shit with my friends. Some really good port and things. I had nowhere at the moment to store that shit, I wish I had. But, wine doesn't necessarily age any better than milk sometimes. But that's kind of an arrogant thing that a lot of men like to say. Especially men who are in, the age gap relationships, and who are looking to find a beautiful young woman, and they will come right out and tell you, why do I want some fat, Western woman who's going to argue with me when I can find some beautiful young Asian princess who is going to treat me like a king, And there's nothing wrong with that. So you got some people on one end who try to trash you if you're in an age gap relationship, and then you've got other people who are actively searching for it and singing its praises. Certainly, if you find yourself with a really good woman, whether she's old or young, and you have a really good relationship with them, then life is good, There are some stupid arguments against age gap relationships. I see a lot of people, some of these grouchy old guys, I don't know if they're just jealous or what, but they'll say, what could you possibly have to talk about with someone who's that much younger than you? Like people from different generations can't communicate with each other, which is stupid. I've seen people from my same generation that a lot dumber, less capable of, having a communication with me that I'm interested in than a lot of younger people are, So that's bullshit. Even if you're a young man, if young women are so stupid that you can't have a conversation with them and they don't know anything, even as a young man, then why would you be interested in getting involved with them and marrying one, It's silly. I have met a lot of young women who are just, incredibly smart, witty, funny people. And why, if you could have that in your life, would you want to pass that up just to hang out with some, bitchy older woman who is ready to lay down and die and just wants to drag you down, So, once again, anytime you talk about this subject, you run into the problem of speaking in generalities. You can't say that all older women are a certain way or that all younger women are a certain way. Any situation you get into, people have to be judged as individuals. Certainly, my wife is very, very smart and funny and clever, and everybody who is around her just can't get over how much fun she is. And as I say, I've known a lot of other young women, very, very smart people, that I'd rather have a conversation with than some of these older women, So the idea that if you get involved with someone who's young, you can't have an intelligent conversation with them is just stupid. If that were the case, then even as a young man, you wouldn't be able to find somebody to have a conversation with. You'd have to wait until they matured and got older before you could find anyone to be with, It's silly. You've got young women who are doctors and lawyers and everything else. Very, very smart people. So to act like just because they're a different age than you, from a different generation, that you don't have anything to talk about, I think that comes from people who are just nostalgic for the old days. That's like the old kind of old person. You got these people that want to sit around and just watch the Rockford Files and Magnum PI and Perry Mason, reruns and all this stuff that they, saw when they were young. If that's the kind of person you are, and your life is centered around living in the past and reminiscing about shit from 50 years ago, then fine. But that's not a problem with younger people. That's a problem with you. For those of us who are still interested in living and think that maybe a lot of our best years are still ahead of us, that's not an issue, We're not worried about having to find somebody from our same generation to have a conversation that we're interested in. I'm interested in talking about what's going on now, I'm not interested in sitting around and reminiscing about television shows from the 70s for my whole life. I have no interest in that, I know people who are into that. But only you can decide if the person is worth being with. There's always going to be other people looking in from the outside who are going to judge you. And they'll see you walking around holding someone's hand who's young enough to be your daughter or maybe your granddaughter. And they'll look at you like, there's something wrong with you or you're a perv or something. They're not the one who gets to have your life. You are. Maybe their life is so fucking boring and dull that they have nothing better to do than to judge other people and worry about what you're doing, you know? So, I don't know why I got to thinking about that again here. Like I say, I guess it's just because thinking about how great my life is, you know? I mean, you're going to find people who hate you for being in a relationship like that, and you'll find people who are jealous of you. Hell, I knew this one young guy at the one Starbucks where I used to hang out, you know, and he found out I was married to like this, you know, young woman in the Philippines. And he's like, oh yeah, man, you know, you're doing it right. He had some formula for how young your wife is supposed to be compared to your age. I forget what it was, like half your age minus 8 or some shit like that. I don't know. But he was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, man. Way to go. So you're going to fight it both ways. But it's silly to think that just because you're married to somebody who's younger than you, that you don't have anything in common. The thing that determines if you're compatible with somebody else is your personalities and the kind of things you're interested in and what you want to do. If you're some old guy who just wants to sit around and reminisce about the past and bitch about how young people these days are stupid and do nothing instead of going out and living and having a life, then probably an age gap relationship is not for you. But maybe no relationship is right for you then.